and Anamika Sharma, psychologist at Metal. Just to give you a brief on the webinar, today's discussion will revolve around the types of personality tests, tie-in of psychometric test results, impact of using psychometric tests, and how is it that we are going to integrate technology and psychometric tests. All right. A little about our today's speaker, Namrata Gill. Namrata drives organizational strategies that propel the diverse growth plans of each of the businesses in the auto and farm sector of Mahindra & Mahindra. She leads the specialist functions of talent management, capability building, and organizational development that support 11,000 plus employees. Namrata has vast experience in all HR domains, from formulating HR strategies to managing functions such as recruitment, performance, and capability. We also have with us Anamika Sharma, who is a psychologist and a PhD with clinical psychology at Metal. She will be sharing her views on the topic during the session. Today's sponsor for the webinar, for making this program absolutely possible, is Metal. Metal is an online assessment and testing platform to measure, analyze, and improve people's skills. They focus deeply on the science of assessments and combine it with advanced technology to deliver high, valid, and reliable tests. As we move on with the session, we have saved time for you to ask your questions at the end of the webinar. And for those watching it live, do post your questions on the chat message and the Q&A message that's given onto your right-hand side, and we'll respond to as many questions as time allows. We have a full exciting agenda, and Namrata will be taking the lead. So without any further delay, over to you, Namrata.
Thank you, Savita. Savita, just doing a time check. How much time I have?
You have about 40 minutes.
40 minutes.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is, let me keep more time for question and answers, right?
Sure.
And I will try winding up in about 30 to 35 minutes so that
Perfect.
We are able to answer more questions and have more interaction.
Absolutely, Namrata. Over to you.
Okay. So this was a difficult topic, and bringing science into anything that is art is difficult, right? So what I was thinking is that how do I handle today's topic? First of all, recruitment, I think getting 100% right is very difficult. In fact, because we have several methodologies today, we can try to bring more reliability into recruitment process. The one thing that we have to keep in mind, how do you measure outcome of recruitment? Outcome is the person that you recruited is high performer, high potential, the most successful outcome, and is able to bring business results for which he or she is recruited. Being that outcome in mind, let's proceed. So how I'm going to run today is, first is I'm going to talk about what is psychometric assessment, what does psychometric assessment usually measure, when it should be used, when it should not be used, what are the do's and don'ts, and how do you want to customize the psychometric assessment that works for you and not be in a rat race because it's a fashion, it's a fad to use psychometric assessment, right? Moving on, I want to talk about the objectives of psychometric assessment, the standardization, adaptation of psychometric assessment to your organization. Is it reliable? Is it predictive? And it is non-discriminatory. Psychometric assessment, it should be noted that all Fortune 500 companies, out of them 80% use them. The 20% who don't use them are also Fortune 500 companies. So, to me, you end up having more decision support system to make a good decision. There are two parts that we aim to measure. One is ability or aptitude, and second is personality or interest when we use psychometric assessment. What do we accomplish really when we use psychometric assessment? We accomplish whether the job that we are interviewing the person fits that. we bring a lot of focus into recruitment efforts. That means we don't rely on one manager versus another manager versus the third hiring manager. It brings a lot of consistency into the process, and you always have a decision support mechanism to support your decision. One of the things that we often see, and it will come into India also, that is recruitment process fair and transparent. It should be not sure that you can do it, and I'm reminded of HCL campaign on the coolest interview ever. So when a candidate gives you feedback on the process of recruitment on social media, it does a lot for your brand campaign. As we are going ahead in our race, we need to be perceived as a fair organization, not only by the employees but also by the potential people who are going to join us. So people, if you see these two circles that I am showing, people who want to work, apply for a vacancy, and people who actually apply for the vacancy, and the kind of people that you have to work for. So this is something that we have to keep at the back of the mind, the circle and the concentric circle. It's like a Venn diagram. Moving on, we have some caveats which we need to keep in mind as we go ahead. The first caveat being psychometric doesn't come free, right? So if you have bulk numbers and if you're looking at reducing the cost of recruitment, it turns out to be expensive. Now, the point is the cost of bad recruit versus if you calculate a cost of bad recruitment and a cost of right recruitment with the right decision support system, sometimes you have to take a call to do in a very practical scenario in an organization. You have to take a call to do at certain levels and not to do it at certain levels, not to do with critical positions and not to do with non-critical positions. So this is something that we have to keep it in mind always. So the cost is a prime factor that doesn't go in favor of this. Second thing is you cannot use any test. You have to use the test which is scientifically proven, has established validity and reliability. Now, I see as we go along, and I see that a lot in my team, people don't pay attention to statistical inferences of a psychometric tool. There are too many, pop psychometric kind of tools available. We have to be very careful not to use them. We have to see which has validity in over the years, which has good sample size, so that it is predictive of what you want to measure. Right? They cannot be used. You can't screen or reject or accept anyone based on psychometric tool. Remember, the keyword that I'm saying is it is a decision support system. It has to be used in conjunction with other things. You cannot use, let's say, an OPQ standalone and say, hey, this person is good because his OPQ is good. No, it cannot be. Second thing is who interprets the report. And this is a very practical thing. I see a lot of misinterpretations of the same report. The person who's interpreting a psychometric report needs to be trained or certified as the case may be. For example, in my organization, I see if a psychometric tool, people just, it's not an English meaning of the word. Let's say democratic. If the person is exhibiting a trait that is democratic, you don't take out the English meaning. English meaning is very different from what the psychometric instrument is trying to tell us from the word. So we have to be very careful that the interpretation of the traits, behaviors, or whatever you're trying to measure are not done on basis of English meaning, like you don't look out in an English dictionary, like we say for, let's say, when we are doing for development purposes MBTI. We don't say extraversion is equal to extroverts. That's not the meaning, right? So the interpretation has to be very specific to what we are saying. And this is where we made the maximum number of mistakes. People have to be trained. Enough knowledge has to be equipped how to interpret the psychometric tool for a particular candidate, right? Now we are going to talk about how to use psychometric testing in hiring, right? It's a fad, but it's also a very important tool that we need to do. But remember, it has to be contextualized in your decision. For example, if an IT services company is using it vis-a-vis a manufacturing company, vis-a-vis a call center, it has to be customized to and contextualized to their requirements. The starting point for this is you have to define the business need. What is your business need? The business need that I want high performing people in a particular sales division. So you have to narrow it down before using what is your business need. The business need is last 3 years I recruited 300 people, but out of which only 20 were high performers. That is the business need, right? Then you have to establish what you are going to measure. Do you have leadership competencies that you want to measure? Do you have specific attributes? For example, is your business looking for a lot of entrepreneur kind of people? Is your business looking for a lot of compliance, culturally compliance people? Is your business looking for a lot of detail orientation? So that you have to predefine before even you go for evaluating which psychometric tool fits your business. Then you have to identify the assessment tests that meet your criteria. If possible, and I am putting if possible, a lot of psychometric tests are customizable. A lot of them are not. My experience says that psychometric tests have to have fair degree of customization, or you have to take that psychometric test for which you can adapt. How do you administer the test? This is extremely important, and this is somewhere we make a lot of mistakes. And then how do you test the test? It's a little bit of, what should I say, irony, testing the test. Defining the business need, right? Why do you want to define a business need? Because the candidate pool you want to hire is very large. You have some kind of new hires are not highest performers for you. You see that adaptability of newcomers to become a high performer, there's a time gap and you can't afford that time gap. Or in IT things that we need, we need to IT business that we have, we need to make sure productivity happens faster. For example, when we recruit from campuses, we want them to be ready in 2 or 3 months. What kind of people do we select? Do we select people with high learning agility? So those are the questions that we need to ask. The other thing is you have very high attrition. You think that people who join us don't stay more than 2 years. What are we going to do about them? What kind of people stay with us? And those are the qualities we should look into people that we want to hire. Or we are looking for good leadership pipeline. We think through our talent management process, our leadership pipeline appears weak. And then we have to define, after we have got a real why in a real spirit analyze, then we need to define the target population. For example, is our target population a managerial band? Are we looking for leadership positions? Are we looking for tech-savvy, pure technical people? Are we looking for mavericks? Are we looking for, let's say, I'm an insurance company, I'm looking for frontline people, or am I looking for specific roles in the business? Now, in Mahindra, I want to give an example. In the Mahindra context, we go to IMs and we hire GMCs. Now, if you, and this we do with pure objective of building a talent pipeline. So we call them GMCs, Group Management Cadre. We recruit from top business schools of the country. We go to 17 business schools and they're deployed in different business. So we think that in order to make sure these people are a talent pipeline, the quality of hire has to be significantly higher than others we are hiring. Then we need to use good psychometric tests that fit us. The next topic that I am going to talk about is how to use psychometric testing in what you need to measure, exactly what you need to measure. Now, before we jump into what we are going to measure, we have to clearly define what success at this job looks like. Now, this is where all of us go wrong, including me, and I've gone wrong many times, and I have no qualms in admitting this. So, what is a great performer? Let's say if we are talking of HR, what is a great performer as head of L&D going to do? What will I say most successful person in L&D is doing? And I have to actually jot down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points there, right? Without quantitative measures, there is no statistical correlation. So we need to absolutely establish that what is the job performance expected out of this job, right? And then what we are saying is that, and I'm going to continue with the GMC example here, don't try to measure too many things. So, and I myself made a laundry list of 10 things and I had to prune it down to 5. When I say what successive jobs look like, and I measure those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. Now let's talk of GMC as in case study. In GMC program, Mahindra measures the cognitive ability. That means abstract, numerical and verbal. These are abilities. And we measure traits. Traits, as we know, are inborn and they are related to Mahindra leadership competencies. Now when I talk of abilities, it could be deductive, it could be inductive, it could be spatial, whatever is important to you, and contextualize it to your business. It helps you do a first level of screening better. Having decided what you want to measure, the next step is identify what kind of assessment tests accurately fit. And I've just taken in the slide number 13 an example in test case. Let's say we take Belbin, OPQ, Big 5 and a host of others. I personally have used McQuarrie quite a lot. So the first, and you can use DISC. So the first is the self things, then the team, then the stakeholders. Now you have to put a chart matrix of which test measures what. I'm just giving an illustrative example. Let's say we are saying ability to handle ambiguity. Now I cannot measure this through OPQ and Big 5. If it is a big need for me, I put yes under Belbin. And if that is the prime thing that I am looking for my leaders, and that's something that I do, clearly OPQ and Big 5 will not work. And this is just an illustrative example. So don't go by the technical definitions of the tools. I know all of us are experts, and I'm not. So now I'm just giving another example, and this is common types of personality tests. We use Big 5 quite a lot. Then there's 16 PF. OPQ 32, then there's a FIRO-B. MBTI is not used for recruitment purposes at all. It is used for development and communication, and this is something, and DISC and Belbin, right? So now if you see suitability, the column called suitability, Big 5 can be used for selection, 16 PF is suitable for selection, OPQ can be used for selection, FIRO-B is used extensively. Again, when I'm saying except for MBTI, which you cannot use in selection, these are the predominant traits of different tools, and there are many such tools available. Now let's say I want to measure openness in a person, right? So I have to again go back to the metrics that I had in the previous slide. I'm just going back to referring to the previous slide for a minute. What you want to measure has to be in the self, team and stakeholders column. Again, you could have many rows. I've just made an indicative list of the rows, but you could have many rows as we go along. So this is extremely important when it comes to how to choose the right psychometric test. One of the things, for example, once you have a team established, then you want to allocate roles, and I find Belbin, which is in the last row in the slide number 14, is very useful. Again, any sort of tools, and there are many more. This is just an illustrative list of more prominent tools. There are very good other prominent tools which I am not mentioning, because otherwise it will take a lot of time and space, and I don't know them also, frankly, that well. Now going over to the next slide, which is talking of common types of abilities test. The common types of abilities and tests that we need to use. There is a verbal, different types of aptitude and ability tests. There are different reasoning tests that we want to use. Again, this is an indicative list. Just to give a practical thought, I don't use abilities for selection per se, but I use them more for screening. But there are different uses that you can do that. For example, verbal, numeric, abstract, spatial, mechanical, data checking. A lot of companies also use inductive and deductive reasoning. We run a high potential program and we have seen that the success of high potential program applies on what kind of screening that we do for people. So we use numerical, spatial and verbal, and I think it works very well for all of these. Then moving on to the next slide and to the next topic, which is how to customize the test. Now, there are both pros and cons and benefits. There is a standardization that is available. For example, any psychometric test in its original form fits the best. You need not customize the test each time, and not many psychometric instruments are customizable. So standardization gives you a benefit of that it's statistically valid. You have established reliability and established sample size that you're working with. However, the con is that it may not fit to the context of your education and it needs to be contextualized. However, customizing really helps, but you need to establish validity and reliability, because after all, as the topic of today People Matters seminar says, that it is about customizing, it is about bringing science to the recruitment. I want to talk a little bit about Mahindra example of GMC. So we have cognitive ability tests that we take off the shelf. We don't try to customize them because we need a standardized way of screening the people. While behavior traits we do through OPQ 32, and this has been customized to our leadership competencies. So one screening is through standard, and the decision support system, which is an OPQ that we use, is customized to our leadership competencies. Next topic, which is test administration, sounds a little operational, right? Means what is the big deal in administering the test? But believe me, the right atmosphere and the right way to administer this goes a long way in getting the right output. Online assessment, I think it's the best way. I think if it's a candidate, you can just send a link, get it done with. You can just send link to everybody. And with the penetration of internet in India, I don't think we are that far away. And there now, I see a lot of tablet versions and Android versions and OS versions also available. Some people, however, for verbal ability tests prefer a controlled environment because it brings more authenticity. For example, even after so much internet and everything, remember GMAT is still happening in a Prometric center. It's not like you get a GMAT test link in your home. So there's authenticity that comes with a controlled environment like a Prometric center or even a pen and paper test. Cognitive ability tests should be used, as I said, for screening purposes only. Don't use them as a decision support system. Once you've screened, don't try to bring them in again and again. You have to finish their use. While personality assessment tests should be used as a decision support system when you are doing interview. So when a person comes for interview, you already know the signs. And sometimes this is a question that I get asked very often, that if people fake it, what do we do? So I think the answer to this is try to have most reliable tests where validity and reliability is the highest and the checks and balances are built in. Then even if there's somebody is faking it, you try to cross question and bring up that fact, validate that fact at the time of interview. Again, the keyword, I'm sorry I'm repeating myself, so I think I'm growing old and I've got into this habit of repeating myself, is that the keyword is that decision support only. they will not be used. And again, aptitude tests, their scores are added, and in Mahindra, so we add those scores and then we arrive at one parameter. Then there's OPQ 32 training program concluded. Then we come to my favorite topic, testing the test. How do you measure that the science that you're trying to bring to recruitment at an additional cost and at an additional effort is actually getting you the right result? Eventually, if you hire the right candidate and if you make the right decision, it should result in reduction in recruitment cost per hire. If I were to go over some statistics, it should reduce by 20 to 30%, provided everybody in the management line gets a buy-in in that. This is another thing where I like to spend a little bit of time on doing that. That everybody in the management has to buy in into, it's not like HR has prescribed a tool and everybody starts using it. Everybody in the management needs to see the value. So before you take a decision to administrate over the whole thing, you have to make sure that the value and the believability in management across all levels of hiring manager is very high in this instrument. And then because you know what kind of people are staying with you and you try to look for those traits, your attrition gets lower in new hires. It reduces the reduction in recruitment lead time and screening time. Let's say you're using ability test for screening. If you can, don't do it across levels because they come for the cost also. And reduction in time to productivity, again, you look for the traits and the behaviors that make a high performer and look for the same traits. Correlation of testing scores with your functional competencies will also give you a data point that goes into the favor of establishing credibility, and engagement scores of new hires will also be another thing that will be do that. I want to give a case in point in here, that how do we measure the quality of hire for a new recruit, right? So in Mahindra, what we do is that we define a unit of measure as a percentage, quality of hire is QH, and total new hires divided by NH. So we get quality of hire in potential ratings, that means number of people having a potential of this and above, performance and tenure. And then we take an average of all these parameters and we say, let's say in Mahindra and automotive division, the quality, only 70% people are high quality hire, right? So when we get that, then we know that minimum level expected of a performance of new hire. We measure it after, it's a lag indicator, it's not a lead indicator, but that is the biggest indicator that you need to measure whether a quality of hire is good. The other ways to measure a good quality of hire is through different tests that we do, which is either you can check a new hire on the competency level at the time of recruitment to competency level at the time of probation, or competency level after 1 year. That's also a good measure, but it's a little cumbersome. Our measure is relatively simple to measure a quality of hire, and that we establish a metric as a benchmark for a year, and next year this whole department has to improve the quality of hire going by next year. And I truly believe that in the science of bringing psychometric and abilities test into this domain of recruitment gives me another decision support system and reduces my lead time and my chances of failure. So Savita, over to you. I'm through with my slides.
Thank you, Namrata. You have really given a very vast experience with knowledge at what you do at Mahindra with the psychometric assessments. We have a lot of questions which have come on board right now. So before we have Anamika, I don't see, I think there's some technical difficulty with Anamika's side. Before we have her, we'll just take a couple of questions. So the first one is from Mickey Chopra. So he wants to know, is it fair to use psychometric assessments for eliminating any candidate?
I think no, because psychometric assessments by their very nature are gives you a personality point and you cannot define. You need to use abilities test for screening and not a psychometric test for screening. So we should not use them. Psychometric tests, no matter what stage you do them, you should always use them as an additional one of the inputs for judging a person and never the only input. So I hope I answered that question.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Namrata. We have Jeevan asking a question. You mentioned about assessments. So he wants to know, would you not want to link competencies to such assessments, or is it already practiced?
I think I gave an example where we customized a psychometric tool called OPQ32 to our leadership competencies. It is good to do it, but it's always not possible, and it never needs to be force-fitted. So our competencies may not exactly always fit into a single psychometric tool, right? For us, we could make sure that majority of them do, and honestly, I believe that reliability gets a little lower than original psychometric would have. So we can do it, the two things. It should never be force-fitted, and we should be very careful whether we are lowering the reliability and validity of that psychometric tool by force-fitting our competencies and trying to measure something there. So there can never be one-to-one correlation. Is very difficult and is almost impossible.
Perfect. We have a question from Urmi Dasgupta. She wants to know, on your slide 22, that's I think where we are right now, what's the difference between appraisal rating and performance scores?
Good question. So in our system, we do performance scores for that particular year. We have goals for that particular year and we set it. Our appraisal rating is a combination of performance and potential. So potential does not come into picture into performance measurement. For example, my performance can be 72% over the goal set for this year, while my potential could be at the highest level. So that is the difference. So when we are measuring a quality of hire, we should not measure a quality hire for only current performance. We should give equal weightage to the potential of the hire. So that is the difference.
Perfect. I think that's a great question, and you've answered it very beautifully. We have another question from Reena Roy. Now, she has given us a situation, so I'll just read that out to you. So before we apply for psychometric tests to hire people, all right, it may be important to understand the personalities of the current performance of the organization. So is it mandatory step before an organization decides to actually set up such assessments to actually analyze the performers' personalities?
Can you repeat the question, Savita? I'm not very clear about the.
Sure. So what Reena would like to know is, before we actually place a assessment test on board, is it mandatory to analyze the personalities of the current performance in an organization so that there is a benchmarking?
So
before
you go for psychometric test, you don't need to analyze the current personalities, but you need to be very clear on what you are trying to measure. If you're trying to, let's say, if you're trying to measure what? If you're trying to measure business results, business orientation of a person, or people orientation. I'm just giving you a very raw example. If you are clear on what kind of leaders do you want in the organization and what kind of leaders you want to recruit, and what are the parameters, that clarity is important. Otherwise, what happens is we try to have a psychometric assessment for something else, and the success results for the organization are somewhere else. So it doesn't fall into a line. And then what happens is the kind of results and the kind of people you try to hire after psychometric assessment, and I've done that experience and have failed. So we need to be very much aligned there. What are the success measures, And is psychometric instrument that you're trying to go in for ready to have those success measures detailed? So I hope I answered this question. I'm not too sure. I wasn't very clear.
Okay. I have another question in line for you. So we have Usha Shri who wants to know, can we objectively decide which job roles for recruitment is required to be supported by psychometric assessments?
Absolutely. We should not do it a blanket carpet bombing for the whole set of recruitments. I think, for example, you should separate out leadership roles, roles having people management responsibilities, purely technical roles, and assess them very differently. Or even if you use the same psychometric assessment, the parameters which need to be looked into that, let's say we have 32 parameters, we need to look at those 6 parameters. If we are handling a technical person, people management and leadership have different expectations. At entry level, very entry level people, you should not do psychometric assessment. You should rather go for abilities test just to screen out, because candidate pool can be very large. So you need to customize, not customize to such an extent that it becomes complex. You have to keep it fairly simple for line hiring managers to follow, but yet you need a degree of customization to be there.
So there's a question from Anushri, which is a little linked to what was Ushashri's question. So at EXL, Anushri is trying to develop certain talent assessments for senior leaders. So is there, what kind of psychometric test you can just suggest a few ideas in your mind that she could use for a pre and a later of the development of these senior leaders. It can be a journey of 18 months before initiating that, and what is it that she can do after?
Sure. So Savita, I think great question. So now for assessment centers, you have to make sure that one competency or one what would you like to call, characteristic or an element gets measured by multiple tools. So for example, it could be for, let's say, one thing, let's say we are talking of people leadership. So people leadership cannot get measured by only one tool. There have to be multiple tools in an assessment scenario. One of the tools could be an in-basket, I'm just taking an example, or a role play or a interview. And psychometric could be a second tool. Now, depending on your competencies, I have seen 2 tools being very frequently used for psychometric. One is OPQ and second is DISC. And I think for us, both of them worked really well. Also, Belbin really helps to understand the role a person is playing. So I had used Belbin in the past. I'm using OPQ now. And also there's another tool, that DISC that we used. All of them work very well in an assessment scenario, but it has to be coupled with some other simulation exercise in an assessment center scenario. So one competency needs to be measured by multiple tools, and psychometric could be one of them.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We have one question from Mitali, wherein she is asking us, are there any legal implications to psychometric tests in recruitment? Since we are talking about implementing such, are there any legal implications to such?
I think we need to buy the licenses, and we need to have a written agreement. That is one. And the second is, person has to be certified or trained by the company to interpret the psychometric tool. So I only know of these 2. I don't know of any other. But the training and knowledge is anyway important, even if it is not a legal implication. So these 2 are prime. And also I think which tool can be used for what purpose. For example, MBTI is very clear that you will not use MBTI for selection or recruitment. So there is that legal implication also.
Right. So we have another question from Ashish Banka, who wants to know that, know about the alternative of psychometric tests. Is there any other way of testing such, are there any other tools to test psychometric other than a test that you write down in a piece of paper or online? And the other following question to this is this psychometric test actually foolproof for competencies?
So, I'll answer the second question first. I think psychometric tests are not foolproof. For example, MBTI has 78% reliability. So there is a probability that 78% of the time, and which is very high for a psychometric instrument. But interview has the lowest reliability, right? If you go over reliability and validity quotient of different assessment means or different interview things that we do, in basket has very high reliability, for example, in assessments. But psychometric is fairly higher than the interview process. So it is not foolproof, but the percentage of probability of its success is much higher than of interview. So that helps. The second thing that question that he asked, is it possible to develop? Yes, it is possible to develop if we know statistics, if we can establish reliability and validity, and if we have enough sample size and psychology background to do it. I think it's a typical make versus buy decision. The amount of effort and time that we spend in developing and then validating the tool, it's easier to buy it. So, but it is not difficult to develop. Only thing is it takes 2 to 3 years to develop and get an adequate sample size to do a right assessment.
Absolutely. Thanks, Namrata. We have another question from Rizwan. Now, Rizwan is asking this question specifically from the company that he's belonging, which is a retail company. They are hiring in high volumes, and the attrition is so. How do they use this test and ensure that, and customize this test so that they could test of the sales force hiring? Is there a way? Is there something that you have experienced so far?
I said you just need to use the screening test because your numbers are high. So you just need to use the ability screening test. For example, if it's Salesforce, I think you need to test them for verbal and numerical. Verbal because they will be front facing the customer, and numeric because they will be also working on the pricing and the numbers and the supply chain and other things. So if you do verbal abilities test, and also you do numerical abilities test, and it should cost, a good test should not cost more than 200 per candidate, 200 rupees per candidate. I think that should be good enough for screening. I don't think with the bulk numbers that retail requires in the frontline sales, you should be administering a psychometric test, but you could do it for your key position. For example, for your store manager, if you're hiring a store manager, you could administer a psychometric test, but the rest you should not do it.
Thanks, Namrata. There is, we have a lot of questions pouring in, Namrata. Now, since we don't have Anamika, I hope you are comfortable and absolutely with time until for the next couple of minutes. So we have a lot more questions. Shall I shoot them more? Perfect. I'm going to shoot them to you, Namrata. So we have one question from Tanvi, who says that, for example, if you're using a DISC module and you find out that the person is eligible for a different kind of role based on his personality. So do you consider him for a future position in that role, or what do you do with that kind of output that you get? Yes.
If it is extraordinarily well, in an average deviation, I don't consider them because psychometric, remember, is one of the inputs. However, if the person shows a lot of inclination, let's say for innovation, right, and it
I think we have just lost Namrata on the call. I'm sure she's going to join back in a couple of seconds. Meanwhile, what I suggest is, since we could not have Anamika on the call, it will be great if you could share your questions for Anamika. She is a technical expert in this topic. We will ensure that the same is answered by Anamika offline as well. Meanwhile, keep sharing your questions while we wait for Namrata to join. Yes, Namrata. Sorry, we lost you. Yes, very much.
I was talking about
You're talking
the
about taking the candidate if the role is based on a different personality. How do you take that role up for a
if
different
it is
candidate?
the person is very high on innovation, I refer them to the recruitment head of innovation cell, who, depending on two things, if there's a vacancy and if they need to build a talent bench, can interview the candidate. Unless the deviation is higher than the average, I don't refer the person.
Absolutely. We have one question from Satish. I may not know a lot about this question because I don't know a lot in particular about the psychometric test, but I'm sure you may. At what stage can we administer the psychometric test? Is there any, after identifying the shortlisted candidate, is there a way of administering a psychometric test?
So I think after you have shortlisted based on experience and you're very sure based on the resume that you want to call the person for an interview, if the time, you should not do any psychometric because it's a money and it's effort and a cost both. So you should only do if you're sure that you want to interview the candidate and you've done an initial round of screening. Otherwise, don't administer that because it will not give you any decision support mechanism to make a decision.
Thanks, Amrita. We have a question from Pooja. Can we measure the tendency of employees leaving the organization or a retention, and which tool is the best for the same? Anything that you have come across?
So it's a very interesting question. Retention, there's no tool to measure retention. However, what you could do is you can collectively look at people who stayed in the organization more than, let's say, 5 years. In what kind of traits do you have, and rebuild that feedback into the kind of people you're recruiting.
Okay. Great. We have Usha Shri asking another question. For how many years is an assessment tool valid?
Assessment, depending on the longevity, are valid for 2 to 3 years. But I don't think, so normally if it's measuring traits, it doesn't change. And if it is measuring, let's say, any other thing, traits, if it's measuring traits, normally you're born with it, so it doesn't change. But other things, if it's measuring, it takes, normally we redo the assessment after 2 to 3 years. That's a general ballpark thumb rule, but it can vary depending on which psychometric assessment you're using.
Perfect. Now, following the question of administering a psychometric test, we have Nandita who would like to ask, at what stage during the interview process is it ideal to administer the psychometric test? Is there a particular time, anything that you have come across?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question again?
Sure. So, Nandita would like to know, at what stage during the interview process should the psychometric test be administered?
So, I already answered that question. I think you should not administer it till you're sure of getting the person on an interview. It should help you in the interview process. Don't administer it ever before.
Right.
The psychometric test, the abilities test, you can use it at the time of screening if your candidate pool is too large. Otherwise, if it's not too large, you should not use abilities test. Again, we should be as frugal as possible because everything comes for a cost. So I believe that there should be a cost-benefit analysis.
Right. We have another question from Ekta Kitwani.
Amrita, you're done. I'm exhausted. Okay. No, I'm joking. Go ahead.
Am I actually shooting you with a lot of them? We have Anamika who has joined us. So what I can do is from this question on, we can share both your views for sure. So that will give some rest to Namrata, who's been answering questions right in a row. So we have Ekta asking us this question. So I understand that she comes in from a hotel industry background. So first of all, for a context, so is there a difference? I mean, should there be a difference in the industry specific to enhance or to accept a module for assessment? So what her question is, what kind of test can be done for staff in hotel industry? Namrata.
I think absolutely it should be different. It should be very contextualized to your business. You should not do what works in manufacturing. It should measure what traits you are looking for in a hotel industry. And in hotel industry, because let's say a frontline staff, because you require in bulk and attrition is high, so you should first look at a cost effective solution. Second, it should give you positive result for that genre that you are trying to measure. So it has to be contextualized. You should not pick up something, let's say if a Marriott wants to pick up something, it should not pick up something that works for Google or that works for MX. It should pick up differently, and also each hotel is different. So let's say Marriott would have different characteristics than an ITC hotel would have, and their success terms would be different. So they should pick up according to the genre that they are operating in, even within the hotel industry.
Absolutely. And Namika, would you like to share your views on the same question?
Definitely. So, agree to what Namrata is saying. I'll share my views on that. So at Metal also, I'll give an example how we do at Metal when we do a competency defining for different job roles in different industries. So if it is, for example, for a hotel industry, then ideally there has to be obviously the nature of work, the organization fitment, the demands of the work are different from a IT industry or a manufacturing industry. So the competencies need to be defined accordingly, and the assessment then has to be defined based on the competencies. It necessarily not be just a personality test. It may involve other assessments, other tests, standardized tests, depending on the demands of the job or the nature of the job. Yeah. Hello. I hope I could
absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks, Anamika. We have another question from David. Can the assessment tool be validated with reference to the performance of any employee with his new employer?
Sure. So that is known as predictive validity when we establish a candidate's job performance against his performance on the psychometric assessment or the two scores. That is done based on establishing the correlation between the candidate's job performance over a period of time and his scores on the test. Certain companies do use benchmarks for using it for new hires. So they administer the test on their existing employee or incumbent employees and then derive an ideal profile for that particular role, job role. And then those test scores or the benchmark scores are used for predicting the performance of the candidate when he's taken a new candidate when he's taken on board.
Sure. Namrata, would you like to share your views on that?
I completely agree with her. I think that those are the points that I would have said. So it's a good view.
Okay, perfect. We have another question from Kamani. She'd like to know, now we have all spoken about how a psychometric test can be used for during the selection process and thereon. So she'd like to know, can it be also used during promotions or for key roles, a leadership role or a management role?
I said earlier that you can use them as a part of your assessment center, but never ever, and I'm saying like Arnab Goswami, ever. So that use a psychometric tool, the only thing for assessment for promotion. You can use it as a part of overall assessment center where you use multiple simulation and assessment methodologies in addition to the psychometric tool.
Anamika, would you like to share your thoughts on that?
I agree with what Namrata said.
Okay.
Yeah, so it should never be the sole decision making criteria for a promotion or succession planning of a candidate. It should always be used in line with other assessment criteria, like setting up a complete assessment center, and then accordingly determine. Okay.
Perfect. So we had about 3 to 4 participants currently online who asked the similar questions. So I hope Balaji's and Ravindra's questions are all answered. We have one following question with which we will wrap up because looking at the time. The last question that we'll take is from Ravindran Gosen. Should this test be complemented with other tests? So this is following the question that we closed previously. Should this test be complemented with other tests? And if so, what is it that you would recommend? Anamika, would you like to share your thoughts on that?
Definitely. So, depending on the job role for which the succession planning or promotion exercise is happening, the types of tests should be incorporated along with the psychometric assessment. For example, if it is for a promotion of a tech lead from to a manager's role, then accordingly, functional skill assessment, higher order thinking ability or the cognitive ability tests can be incorporated. Certain in-basket exercises can be incorporated. And depending on the work nature, some case study simulators and other types of simulation-based exercises can be incorporated in the assessment center.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And Amrita, from your experience, what do you think a psychometric test should be coupled with?
And I'm going back to recruitment. I think you can couple it with other job tests that you intend doing on the candidate. It's perfectly okay to do that. So I don't think there's another thing. Don't couple another psychometric instrument with it, because then you'll find it very difficult to get a convergence. But you can do other job tests which are role specific, which are organization specific, in addition to the psychometric test. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We have many questions even still in our question tab, but we'll try and take them offline. With this question and answer session, we're going to wrap up today's webinar. Once again, thank you very much to our partner, Metal, for being there and making it happen. And a special thanks to Namrata and Anamika. Namrata, for actually taking up so many questions in Anamika's absence. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you so much, Savita. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Pleasure, absolute pleasure. Thank you, Anamika, for joining in and being there and sharing your thoughts and views on this excellent topic that you have on psychometric assessments. With this, I'd like to thank everybody in the webinar audience for participating in today's presentation, and we really look forward to welcoming you to many such more. With this, we conclude today's webcast. Thank you once again and have a great day. Thank you.